There's this one moment in human interaction that's just pure psychological warfare. It happens everywhere, from a late-night poker game to the highest levels of global politics. Today, we're going to break down the psychology of the bluff.
So, just picture it. You're at the table, it's late. This is it, the final hand. Every single chip you have is piled right there in the middle. The air is so thick you could slice right through it. You glance down at your cards. They're good, but, they're not a sure thing. And right then, your opponent stares you down and shoves their entire stack forward. All in. Now it's on you. The decision is yours and only yours. What do? Call or fold? That one choice, call or fold, is what we're going to unpack right now. Because honestly, this isn't really about poker. This is a classic strategic showdown that happens in business deals and politics, pretty much everywhere. So let's dive in and really dissect the anatomy of a bluff.
So what even is a bluff, really? Well, the word comes from the Dutch bluffing, which means to brag. And that's exactly what it is. A bluff is a performance. It's a signal you send to make your opponent think you're holding all the power when you're really not. It's strategic bragging.
So, that big decision you have to make, call or fold, it actually creates 4 totally different endings. And trust me, each one comes with a huge and completely different emotional punch for you and your opponent.
Okay, first scenario. You decide it's just too risky and you fold your cards. Then, a second later, your opponent flips over a terrible hand with a huge grin on their face. They were bluffing. For them, it's pure joy. And for you, it's that horrible, sinking feeling in your stomach. You got played.
All right, let's try that again. You fold. But this time, they show their cards, and wow, they had a monster hand. They were going to win no matter what. See, the feeling here is totally different. It's not that gut punch of defeat, it's just relief. You feel like you just dodged a massive bullet. Good call.
Now let's change it up. You decide to go for it, you call their bet, but then they turn over their cards and, just like before, they had you beat. You lose. This one is just the clean, sharp sting of defeat. You took a shot, but they were just holding the better hand. Simple as that. And finally, the best one, the ultimate rush. You take a breath, you push your chips in to call, and they flip over. Absolutely nothing. They were bluffing. You got 'em. That whole pile of chips slides your way. I mean, that is pure elation. It's a win that feels so much sweeter because you saw right through their act. With all these intense emotions flying around, relief, defeat, joy, dejection, it seems totally impossible to make a logical decision, right? But, believe it or not, there's a rational way to cut through all that psychological noise. And you do it by playing the numbers. The biggest trap you can fall into here is what strategists call the rabbit hole. It's that crazy mental spiral of, well, I think that they think that I think that they think. You know what I mean? It's an endless loop of second guessing, and it gets you absolutely nowhere. A good strategist knows how to avoid that trap entirely. So how do you escape that rabbit hole? Well, the answer comes from this really cool field of math called game theory, and it gives us something called the equilibrium strategy. The best way to think about it is like a strategic stalemate. It's a way of playing where neither person can get an advantage because your moves are perfectly balanced against each other. So what does that perfect balance actually look like? Well, game theory says the person who could be bluffing should do it exactly 25% of the time they have a weak hand. Why that specific number? Because that's the sweet spot that makes your opponent not care if they call you or not. Any more than that, and they'll just call you every time and win. Any less, and you're not bluffing enough. Okay, so what about the person facing the potential bluff? Well, their best move is to call 50% of the time. This is the perfect defense. It makes the bluffers play a wash in the long run. They don't gain anything by bluffing you, but they don't gain anything by not bluffing you either. It just totally neutralizes them. It's this beautifully simple answer to a super complex problem. But, of course, this isn't just about a game of cards. These exact same ideas, bluffing, calling, finding that strategic balance, they play out on a much, much bigger scale. Sometimes the game is being played on the world stage, and the stakes are infinitely higher. A really chilling example of this comes from 1936. Adolf Hitler moved his troops into the Rhineland, which was a direct violation of the Treaty of Versailles. This was a gigantic political bluff. The signal he sent was one of total unpredictability, that he was willing to risk absolute disaster.
France, his opponent in this high-stakes game, was terrified of another war. So they folded. They didn't call his bluff. And we all know the devastating historical consequences of that successful bluff.
And that kind of brings us to this final thought from the legendary gambler Amarul Islam. He said, if you are going to bluff, make it a big one. It's a line that just perfectly captures the whole high-risk, high-reward nature of this strategy. And it really leaves you wondering, right? In our own lives, when we're facing a big bluff, how do we decide when to call and when to just fold?